gonna start now. Welcome everyone. This is our, I guess, week 4/5 edition. I guess we are in week 5 now. Um, I guess I like to start off with a moment of silence for our recently departed Andrew Hua. He got bodied to hell yesterday by John Lim on a legendary DN joke. And with me, I have Alex Feigenbaum and Michael Diaz here to discuss the trades, continuing off from where we left off last week. Welcome, Mike and Alex.
Thank you. R.I.P. Wah.
Yes, rest in
Yeah,
peace.
he will be missed.
He will be missed. Dude, the setup with John coming up with those John nicknames into the Mun chat. I was also like, damn, like whose name starts with like Mun, and then and then Hua just took the bait 100%, and that was tragic. That was tragic.
Mhm.
But yeah, onto the, I guess, the topic that we're here to discuss. I think we left off right where the off-season trades ended last time.
Yep, I
Yeah,
think that's it.
Right.
I think you're right. And so at the very
Okay.
top here, we have a couple of failed poaches. And actually, Jordan Love was recently involved in a different trade, so we can probably discuss him at that point. So I say let's start with our own Alex Feigenbaum's trade with John. He sent Kyler Murray, or he got Kyler Murray and TPJ, and sent Marquise Brown over to Mars. Now, obviously, a lot of the big piece here is Kyler Murray, who hasn't played yet. But Alex, how do you feel about this deal so far?
I feel all right about it. I think I didn't really need the depth at wide receiver because I haven't had too much bad luck with injuries so far. So I don't think I've missed out on much, but obviously I wound up getting Hollywood back because I do like his potential this year. And I think he's been playing really well, so I like his output as well this year. You guys know I'm a Dobbs lover, so I do see I do see that offense kind of not being nearly as bad as people suspected it would be. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think this trade it kind of came together. Like John kind of approached me about this trade. I don't. When I went into the draft, I was thinking like, oh, Murray would be a nice stash. Like, kind of cool idea. Grab him now, maybe keep him if he comes back strong. And then I sort of the draft started going. I just totally forgot about that idea uh, until I had spent until I was out of positions, basically out of roles to fill. Um, so yeah, so I don't know. John kind of approached me with this. I was just like, yeah, this seems good.
Yeah, it
John
has
seemed to
a
take that
wide
too
range
much.
of outcomes here with Kyler Murray. Kyler was at one point, viewed as a top five or top three, quarterback in like dynasty circles, or maybe top one. And or I don't think there's really a range where he's worthless, but there may be a situation where he doesn't look healthy and people don't want to acquire him. But I think you'll have a lot of options if you do decide you want to trade Kyler, and clearly your team's playing well, so you didn't miss Hollywood too
That's
much.
what I like about it. That it's like I felt like starting the year I could go either way kind of this year. Like felt good about my team, but you don't know how these things are going to go. And he's a nice piece where you can go as long as you don't get too screwed during these bye weeks with losing
Of
this
course.
AR spot and having some depth issues. But
Yeah,
um,
and we'll get to talk a little bit more about Hollywood a little later when we get to the more recent deals. Um, but Mars continues on the warpath here. I mean, this is it seems like John's week. Um, on September 10th, he successfully poached Rushy Rice from Orange County.
yeah,
Ru
a great moment in the Discord where he caught one touchdown in the first half and John went coach.
yeah. Uh, it's still very early in his career. And John has already traded Rashi Rice, so
Hmm.
he's another name that will come back. But it's we never know with these Kansas City receivers. We mentioned this in the last show. Everyone's looking for the next guy who can take over, not even be Tyreek, but even be Juju from last year. and we still haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a just a crapshoot. Sky Moore's on the 2-year contract in our league now, and is he gonna even be kept through this entire season? Who can say at this point?
Yeah. So we'll see, but John already cashed in on this, so now it's um,
Yeah,
Andrew Chu's lottery ticket.
yeah. That's fair.
Okay, so here comes John again. We're making a trade with another member of this panel. Um, Mars receives Odell Beckham and trades Michael Gallup and a 2024 comp pick. Um, so Dustin, you were involved here.
Yep.
What were your thoughts? How do you feel about this one right now?
We just basically wanted the roster space at that point, and I think we did feel kind of pretty good about Flowers, but didn't want like too much concentration in that offense. And yeah, John was interested in Odell Beckham as he has been for basically his whole career.
Yeah.
So Gallup was just the placeholder, just in case like we didn't get anything on waivers, and then it was really for the comp pick. Pretty happy with getting a comp pick for, a guy that I don't think we would have. I mean, yeah, we wouldn't have started him at any point so far this year. And so far hasn't done anything, but he has been hurt, so he could come back and contribute a little during the bye weeks and stuff. But for us, this was a good allocation of trading off somebody that we kind of wanted to move on from, and explore what was on waivers. So I think we picked up Josh Reynolds for Michael Gallup's spot. Um,
And Reynolds has been good.
yeah, and Reynolds has been fine. I think useful for sure. Other than the Falcons game where he got shut down by AJ Terrell, like he's been usable. So I don't think we really lost much in going from Odell to Reynolds, and the compensation pick I think could be interesting. I don't know how deep next year's draft is, but I think that compensation pick is always kind of interesting because it's right after the second round, and the salary of 3 compared to 4 isn't huge, but it definitely has like at least a visual effect for people where they see it as like you know better value at that point. So you know, yeah. Well, I mean, what do you guys think? It was a pretty simple trade, so I don't think it even
Yeah,
requires
so
that
not a
much.
ton to
Yeah.
dissect there. I mean, Odell is. I mean, what's he gonna play 8 games this year maximum?
I mean, he's getting paid 16 million. He
Yeah, no, I know, but it's almost like even if he has a few good games, it's like this is a guy you start him, he might get injured in the second quarter,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
finish
yeah.
him out, but
I
he
agree.
sits on your IR the whole season. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
I would not be buying it. John has tried it. I will say John is ready to move on from Odell.
Oh, really? Yeah,
My understanding.
Well,
What
I
what
think we
your
all
thoughts?
are.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next day, another trade. This one potentially even less significant than the
yeah.
last one.
Yes.
Have Demario Douglas or Van Jefferson done anything of note this season?
No, same idea. We dropped Van Jefferson immediately for a defense actually. This, I know Feigenbaum was confused about what was going on here. Demario Douglas did have a dead cap hit if he was dropped
Uh,
of one of
I see.
one.
I see. Yeah, I got it. I got
Yeah, yeah. So not a lot, but we wanted to save on the dead cap hit if possible, which is why we sent the one fab, which I think
it.
is
Right.
not a lot, but also, a dead cap hit of 1 is not really affecting most teams, and Wilson
So you
Park.
always knew you were dropping Van. It wasn't like you changed your mind.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. This was also just a placeholder in case
I
we missed out on like, just to cuz they would have Williston would have to drop a player anyway, so a for a player is fine, and we just wanted to save the dead cap hit, and for Williston Park, they had the roster space to like, maybe see if he turns out to be anything, but
as someone who's watched a little too much Patriots this year, I will
yeah,
say
yeah.
it does look kind of nice sometimes,
Yeah,
and
but
then
just not a
then
ton
he
of.
like fumbles or
Right,
whatever.
not a ton of opportunity consistently because they play like
Mhm.
all 8 of their wide receiver fours like evenly, and like
Mhm.
it's just not a really great offense. I do think he's somewhat talented, but like I just it's not happening right away, and we didn't want to wait either, and I think he just got dropped, so even Wilson Park couldn't wait on him. So it was just to get rid of the dead cap hit, and we wanted to like kind of play around with some defenses and some guys on waivers. So pretty simple. I know it seemed like a weird trade because we did drop Van Jefferson like immediately. I think we barely made the deadline to like get it done, and then just basically dropped him in waivers. So, but yeah, I mean a lot of talk about
Makes more
pretty
sense. I didn't
pretty nothing.
understand that. I hadn't processed that dead cap.
Right, right. Not a
A
huge dead
savvy
cap.
understanding of the league that I
Yep, yep.
don't have.
But it could make a difference later on. I think a lot of
Mhm.
teams in general are dealing with like, more dead cap than they have in the past. So I do think keeping it cleaner is a consideration. Obviously, if
Mhm.
the cost was like, a pick or like too much free agent budget, then we probably just would have eaten it. But one fab was fine. So I think
Mhm.
Yeah.
the next trade is a lot more interesting. We can move on from these two of
Yeah.
my pretty useless trades and go on to something a little bit more meaningful.
Yeah, so there was a lull after that September 13th
Can you
trade.
hmm
pull it down just a little because
Yes,
the
yes, yeah,
thin blocks
yeah,
the
yeah,
bottom.
yeah,
So what we're seeing here is Madison receives DeAndre Swift and Marquise Brown in a trade with Mars in exchange for Ramondre Stevenson, Mike Evans, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So probably five relatively big name players here.
yeah. Bigger
Um,
than Demario Douglas and Odell Beckham. I would say.
yeah. And a 2 for 3 trade, which is always interesting. Uh, so let's start with you, Alex, since you were involved here. Talk about your thoughts behind this deal and why you feel good about the return you got.
Yeah. So to this coming from this trade's kind of coming from two places, which is one, I actually needed a receiver for this week
hmm
because I just was kind of between bye weeks
Bye
and
weeks. Yep.
injuries and stuff. I just couldn't make a
Yeah.
roster. So it was either this or play waivers and try to get someone.
Yeah. Evans and JSN are on bye week, right? Correct this week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Evans is maybe injured, but also on bye week.
Also,
So
yeah. And you
um,
didn't know this, but Amon Ra is also doubtful now, right?
right, we actually
So
needed another right. So I would have really needed another
yeah, yeah.
receiver.
Without this trade, you would have, yeah, really been shorthanded. But
Yeah, could have been trouble. But that was part of it. Is like, okay, this definitely shores me up for this week, improves my position. And then I mean, a lot of this comes down to how you feel about Swift versus
mm-hmm.
Stevenson rest of the year, pretty much. To me, Brown and Evans about the same, at least relatively same tier.
Wow,
Evans
I
has been,
disagree.
interesting. I think
I mean, I haven't looked. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Evans right now has been playing quite well for the first, like his stats are good for the first 4 games, but he's old and just got injured and like,
Yeah, I think the
just a big
currently
gamble in
injured
uh
part definitely evens it a bit. He is
yeah,
on bye, but he did just get hurt, so we don't know if he might miss
right.
a game or he
30-year-old with
might
a hamstring
be.
injury
Yeah,
is
yeah,
is not necessarily where you want to be. And Hollywood younger and just in what I think is an offense that's getting better each week, and so and goes into a much better schedule coming up. So those things to me, I thought about even-ish, and then I just honestly to some extent I was excited about Ramondre. He looked so good last year. He looks terrible this year. Uh, if you watch, he's going straight into the line. Like they're getting there's no holes open in
mm-hmm.
that defense, and they're just stacking the box because Mac Jones can't throw.
Agree, agree.
And so they look like the Jets is what the Patriots look like, and I feel like you're just getting in such bad. So they're scoring so few touchdowns. It's so hard for a running back to generate value in our league if you don't score touchdowns. And like, I'd just rather be on the team that's scoring 3 or 4 touchdowns every week than the team that's scoring 1 or 2 touchdowns every week. Uh, with my running backs. And so that's where I come from. And JSN I think is a lottery ticket that just was getting really hard for me to fold because I'm stuck with one IR spot on Kyler,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm now going into bye weeks where I'm needing to like cycle through my roster a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have some inconvenient salaries on my roster that I'm like not quite ready to drop, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
it started to feel like pretty inconvenient to need to cycle out these like somewhat injured, somewhat bye week JSN who's just not really playable for at least another few weeks
Mm-hmm. For
probably.
sure. Yeah.
And so I don't know. It just felt like this gives me a lot more freedom to start maneuvering and cycle through players a lot faster. That's where I come from. But I think to me it's sort of like the two big advantages. I think Swift is just going to be a lot better than Stevenson the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That is, it's depends on how you feel about that. And then I think JSN is not bad. Like I don't wouldn't say I'd give up on the chance that he's kept through next year, but he's a huge liability for me just because I'm stuck with the Kyler and IR, and I just can't get like I couldn't really get enough maneuverability this week
I think
to count my
Maybe Mars is playing like five D Yahtzee with the putting the Kyler Murray on your roster so you would feel
right.
that tightness, and then
That's
later
right.
swooping in for rookie 4 weeks, like right after he's eligible to be traded, he just swoops in and says,
Yeah.
"Oh, looks like you're having trouble finding space for some
I will
guys."
say, to John's credit, he works the phones
Oh
hard.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the Brown and Evans part, I do think maybe you were understating Evans a little bit, but I think for the most part, everyone kind of knows what these guys are value wise. Like, you might be a little bit higher on one guy versus the other, but like they are what they are. And JSN, I think everyone agrees right now unplayable. Talented guy. But if you can't wait on him, you can't wait on him, right? But I think the Swift Stevenson part is the part that's gonna make this a win or lose for either side. Swift obviously has looked really good, and the Eagles' offensive line is quite monstrous. But in the past, he has dealt with like injury issues himself. The Eagles have, had a kind of frustrating rotation sometimes. That doesn't always make sense. And on Stevenson's part, yeah, I think he did look a lot better last year. He doesn't look the same this year. He's the line's not blocking well. That offense isn't clicking, and Ezekiel Elliott is there, like, as meh of a guy and as washed up as he may be. If he even takes, one or two touchdowns away from Stevenson, like it gets really hard to find that value. Like what's his ceiling otherwise if he doesn't get the touchdown? Like right now it seems like 60 yards and like, 20 yards receiving, and even if it gets better, that's not something that's winning you weeks. So I think on that part, like if you're looking for the kind of risky but like high value thing, it's definitely Swift, right? And let me see, how expensive was Swift? $12. So I mean, it's hard to trust a Eagles running back based on like the last year or two, but it's possible
Yeah, he's a
that's.
he's a free agent too, so it's like
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
who
Well,
who knows?
right, right.
The Eagles aren't paying for a running back.
Right, right. Behind that line, probably not. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, 12 is cheap enough where maybe Swift just stays healthy all year and like gets a deal somewhere else, like
Hmm.
ends up on a good offense. So I think even that has potential keeper value down the line. I mean,
Hmm.
he is gonna have to put together a whole year of being like healthy and like productive. Which he hasn't done in the past, but like if he does, that earns him the trust, I think. So, um, I think I definitely like this from Madison right now. I will say, like, the willingness to give up on,
Yeah,
your rookie,
JSN.
yeah, I mean, we saw it last year with Garrett Wilson, and yeah, Garrett
Hmm.
Wilson has dealt with Zach Wilson and stuff, but like, the fact remains, you could have traded Garrett Wilson in the offseason for probably a lot more than, what you got for him, right? So,
Gotcha.
yeah, so Yeah, so I wonder if that's the part you might regret at some point. But I do understand the point about like, oh, during bye weeks it does get hard to carry too many dead guys, and then like, you know, you know, guys like Gibson have like, guaranteed money, so you don't want to just like cut him now. You want to see if he can recover some trade value, and like you can trade him away instead of cutting him. And Deontay Johnson's injured right now, so your roster was definitely a little bit clogged. So I do understand that point. But I think that'll be the interesting part to look out for in the future, to see if JSN turns into something, or maybe he'll just clog up the roster for John, and then he trades into LIC. uh,
Yeah, exactly. He can clog my roster all day.
True. I do like the
Curious
talent.
to hear your thoughts, Diaz. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's very interesting with Ramondre, and a lot of people were worried about this in the offseason. I think that the question in the Patriots offense is how much can you rely on a running back, which is it's ironic that we're talking about that with the Eagles, but that's been Bill Belichick reputation for a long time.
Hmm.
And he got a lot of productivity in the passing game last year, and it's basically disappeared. For a team that is constantly playing from behind, it's not a good team. You would want or expect, and they don't have good wide receivers. You would think that this talented, running back would be getting targets out of the backfield. Um, but in the games where they've been losing, it hasn't really been there since week one. So it's a question of whether that can come back. Um, and DeAndre Swift doesn't look like he's slowing down at all. So I agree. You, Alex, you called JSN a lottery ticket earlier. I would, take issue with that description. Um, this is a first round talent from the Ohio State University. Like I think there's a very good chance that I would be surprised if he turned into nothing. And I think there's a very good chance that he is a good keeper or a multi-year keeper in the offseason. Um, but I understand the situation, and I think you got a good return.
Hmm.
DeAndre Swift looks great. He's shot out of a cannon every play.
Hmm.
Okay, so this would more TBD. We'll see how this one shakes out, and it'll be interesting looking back on it in a few weeks. Um, the next day, Great Kills, who had been looking for a quarterback, found it in the much maligned Mac Jones in
Hmm.
exchange for 3 fab. So you're starting Mac Jones. You need a quarterback for this week.
We did, yeah.
Um, we know that Zach Wilson was on waivers, so I'm
Hmm.
sure that's something you considered. Did you have any other considerations um, before you settled on Mac Jones?
Yeah, we were in talks for Jordan Love actually. But they were, LIC was looking for a running back, and we just didn't have an extra running back to deal like Virginia did. So we basically started talks there, and then once talks, we just couldn't you know give LIC what they needed. So we moved on quickly to Mac Jones. Just needed a quarterback. I I think everybody knows that Mac Jones is struggling right now. But uh, yeah, waivers got drier really quickly because we had been eyeing Dobbs for a bit, and we thought we could wait another week on him. But you guys scooped him up, and he's looked very good. So he was actually our first option for a while, and I guess we overplayed our hand in waiting. Um, so yeah, I mean, we end up with Mac Jones. We did explore a bunch of other options, but they were either too expensive in terms of salary or too expensive in terms of, capital, where it didn't make sense for a bye week fill in to give up for. Um, so yeah, I think this is another like pretty simple trade, not exciting, not we didn't take a risk. We just kind of went with the safe and wait and see approach. And I think the next trade is probably a contrast to that, where Love is, I think, slated right now to be the third quarterback, but he's still Virginia still gave up quite a bit for him. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
let's discuss that. So
Mm.
this was on the same day.
mhm,
LIC receives Jerome Ford, who's now the starter in Cleveland,
mhm,
and a round two pick for next year. Great Kills is 2024 second rounder. In exchange for Jordan Love, who was poached early in the offseason, so during the season, so he's got a guarantee for next year,
mhm,
and $8 fab.
mhm.
So Alex, I'll give you the choice. Do you have more opinions about Jerome Ford or Jordan Love? Who do you want to talk about?
I have more opinions about Love, just because I have barely watched the last two Cleveland games that were very
Mhm.
exciting.
You're
So
missing
all I've
out,
seen of
yeah.
Ford is all I've seen from Ford is the that brief like when he came in for a
Right,
half
right.
after um Love I think has been a little bit polarizing in that like the results are quite good and the process is quite bad sometimes.
Yep.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I really like the receivers. I like Dobbs. I like Watson. Like, I think it's obviously a system that has produced good quarterbacks. Like, kind
Mhm,
of like the setup and the idea of being potentially on a Packers quarterback, like being on the Packers passing game for the next potentially several years.
mhm,
Like, I really like that conceptually. So like that's kind of what brings me toward saying I like this for Virginia. Um, more than the actual play that I've seen of,
mhm,
I guess,
mhm,
is that I just like where he's at, and I think, he can make like he's made pretty good throws, and so he definitely can do it.
mhm.
Yeah,
It's just
Jordan
gonna be a
Love,
matter of getting him to be more consistent and all that.
he's Jordan Love is currently ranked 11th in HFFL scoring in
Mhm.
points per game among quarterbacks. Um, he has he threw three touchdowns in his first two games, but has yet to eclipse more than 200, or he's yet to eclipse more than 260 yards, passing yards in a game. And his last two games, he has had one touchdown each and one and two interceptions. So the shine is definitely off. Um, but Dustin, do you feel like Jerome Ford is a a good return for a guy who, as Alex mentioned, does have the upside of playing in a quarterback friendly organization with good weapons?
Right. Yeah, I think the strongest thing going for Love is obviously the numbers I think look better than what, the process looks like. I think a lot of people have, in today's age of like, so much information, like, people on Twitter are saying like, oh, like he looks pretty awful sometimes. His like expected completion percentage, like stuff like advanced metrics are not great. But I think the biggest thing going for him is the stable organization factor. He's not going to be yanked around. They're going to be patient with him. They're going to give him, um, a good style of offense to succeed in. So, like, even if he doesn't look great, I would feel fairly confident that he'll be, an okay value on that keeper contract next year. But for LIC, I do understand like he's probably watched more of Jordan Love than others, so that might factor into like feeling antsy about moving him now
Hmm.
before he gets exposed. Not saying that he will be exposed, but there is a future where the results catch up kind of to the metrics with Love, and he's viewed as a negative asset even, right? Like I think it's an
Yeah,
asset that can go both ways at this point. So, I'm not that enthused with cashing it out for Ford, but I think the second round pick helps because that's interesting draft capital that you could use later in a trade. Um, and I do understand like watching a guy every day when you own him, you might be antsier to move on from him than not. So, I know he was resistant to handing Virginia another chance to win a game and stay in the hunt. Like he's on a three year championship streak, so a lot of people are looking forward to him just missing playoffs, so they don't have to worry about it anymore. But I get it for LIC. it's not that I'm high on Ford or think like, he's gonna be a great piece for them. It's just I do understand like you don't want to be saddled with a negative asset, and the second round pick is a guaranteed good asset. And if Ford plays really well, like he's so cheap that he'll be a tradable asset himself, and at worst not like a negative asset, like Love could be. So yeah, that's where I think LIC might be. He might not have been thinking of Love being a negative asset at all, but I do know that like the metrics are kind of weird enough where some people have said like, oh, like trade him now. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the Packers stable like organization thing is probably the biggest thing going for Love right now. So good trade for both sides, I think.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. It seems like no one's ready to plant their flag in Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Love yet.
Yeah.
Um, but stranger things have happened for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, next day, October 5th, New England receives a 2024 second rounder. Apparently, it was their second rounder that they got back in exchange for a 2024 third rounder,
The Madison trade
$1 fab.
for the second rounder before.
Oh, okay. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank
yeah, sorry.
you. $1 fab and Traylon Burks to Mars. So really, this was moving back a little bit in the rookie draft next year. A $1 fab and um, Traylon Burks going to Mars. So um, we have no idea what the rookie draft will look like. A dollar fab is just John doing his thing. So the question here is, does anybody have any confidence that Traylon Burks, former first round pick, will be, worth anything, do anything worthwhile this season? Silence.
Yeah, I'm not touching that Tennessee receivers. I do not. I mean, he's got two of them now. He's got
Yeah,
Hopkins
yeah.
and
I was
Burks.
gonna say he's got two shares now. He's gonna make sure to get all like 85% of the 130 yards they throw for a game. So
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how this trade originated. I don't know who was pushing for this. I kind of honestly was kind of speechless when I saw this. It's like, okay, all right.
I honestly forgot Traylon Burks existed. Honestly, like for a guy that
Yeah.
was so highly hyped last year,
Mhm.
like nobody cares about him anymore, right? Like nobody's even like saying like, oh, like if he just gets healthy, or like, oh, he's so talented, or nobody's even saying he sucks. He's just kind of like he exists, but like nobody cares, right? For better lack of word. So yeah, it was funny to see this trade, but it does make sense. Mars took Trey Burks with their first round pick last year, so he obviously has some attachment and some familiarity, with the player. Um, and I guess he didn't. I mean, I wouldn't have given up a second round pick for Trey Burks when I haven't been thinking about Trey Burks, obviously. So I wouldn't give up anything for him. But it could turn out well if there have been stranger things than a late wide receiver bloomer. I think he has been hurt a bunch of the time that he's been in the league, so maybe he just needs a long stretch of health. But I'm not excited for that passing offense. So definitely a trade probably from Mars feeling like they had some unfinished business with Trey Burks last year. I think if they didn't draft him last year, he probably wouldn't have been on their radar either. But yeah, I mean, there's not
Yeah,
a lot to say past that, I don't think.
this just probably seems like found money for New England.
Yep.
It seems like a situation where John reached out.
Hmm.
Wonk, you said, sure, I'll take a second rounder. Why not?
Yep.
For a guy who was probably, on the very edge of their roster, might have been dropped in a week or two.
Hmm.
Um, so we'll see. Like you said,
Yeah.
he has first round pedigree, so
Yeah.
there's some reason to speculate.
It evens the Madison trade a little bit because we did think he might have given up a little bit too much for Madison just based on what I guess similar kind of like not super exciting running back keepers went for. Um, Although we did acknowledge Madison was probably a different tier than Herbert, at least coming into this season.
Mhm.
So this probably just balances it. New England gets their second round pick back. And Mars, just gets the juices flowing. I would say mostly. I
Yeah.
think it's that kind of trade. Like Mars just wanted to get hyped about something, and I guess Trey Burks was it. So I think
Yeah,
the next trade is a lot more.
I'm
Uh,
about to say, yeah,
Bomb, yeah, this is a bomb
the
of a
hype
trade.
continues. Um, and
Which
I
I think,
guess,
honestly, shout out to John for how hard he must have worked this week to
yeah,
to complete all of these trades. Because
yeah.
like we spent like an hour figuring out that Mike Evans move.
Mm,
Uh, if each of I can't. I mean, this must have taken forever. This Gibbs trade.
mm-hmm.
I think I don't know, but yeah, let's get into it.
okay, so Williston Park receives Ramondre Stevenson, who played 0 games for Mars,
Yep.
Rushy Rice, a 2024 third rounder, which Mars had to give because they have an extra one that they just got the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
day,
Just
in
wheeling and
exchange
dealing.
for second overall rookie pick, I believe, Junior
Yeah.
Gibbs,
But
and Tyler Algier from the Atlanta Falcons. So um, we don't see Williston Park make a ton of trades.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Chu is a very busy guy.
Yep.
Um,
Especially busy this
but
year.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And congrats again.
Mm-hmm.
But so what do we think about the pieces that he acquired here? Are we excited about, I mean, we already talked about Stevenson. Seems like all of us are a little down on him right now. What about Rushy Rice? Do we have any thoughts about him, or is he just a guy?
I think of the guys in Kansas City right now, obviously non-Kelsey, Rice probably looks the most promising. Well, like part of it is that he has the least NFL time.
Bad
So
tape. Yeah.
yeah, least like bad moments and bad tape. So the unknown is always more interesting than the kind of known, failed or unexciting prospects. And for a rookie, he in an Andy Reid offense, he has been fairly involved, and I think he's gotten stopped at the 1 yard line a couple times, so his numbers could even look a little bit better than they are. Um, so I think the upside is definitely there with Rashi Rice. You know, we have acknowledged it might be a fool's errand looking for that next Kansas City wide receiver, but like even a Juju level guy that stays Juju level from last year for the next 3 or 4 years is an interesting and valuable prospect, and it'll always have trade value because people will always dream that it could turn into a little bit more. Um, I don't love the idea of giving up on Gibbs at this point in the season. But I do think if you're a little bit of a believer in Ramondre Stevenson, yeah, there were points last year where Ramondre looked like he would be even keepable beyond this year. So potentially maybe he got two keepable assets back for one in Gibbs, but even maybe Gibbs never gets a big enough role, or maybe he just isn't good enough to be that capable because he himself is how much? 18. So like he's the same price as Ramondre. Alex, who would you say right now, if gun to your head, you have to give a 1 year keeper contract to? Would you rather give it to Gibbs or would you rather give it to Stevens? I guess your answer is probably obvious since you traded one of
Gibbs.
them away.
It's Gibbs. Yeah, I think there was a better market for Gibbs.
Yeah, I do
He
agree
looks
with that.
electric every time. He obviously hasn't scored yet this year. Hasn't I think he hasn't scored yet this year. Hasn't had a huge game yet.
Mhm.
A little disappointing probably as someone
Mhm.
who seemed like, when you look at Bijan, obviously one
Right.
pick earlier and he's, putting up 15, 16 fantasy points somewhat easily, it feels like. And, Gibbs is kind of sitting in that ugly 6, 7 type point games.
Mhm. Mhm.
But he looks electric with the
Mhm.
ball. Um, And not a lot of rookies are that good in the first 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's rare that Bijan is this good in the
Yep.
first 4 games.
Yep.
You can't expect that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like, how much of an upgrade are you getting, even just for this year, from Stevenson to get from Gibbs to Stevenson? Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're getting an upgrade this week. I mean, obviously Gibbs may be injured a little bit, might be out this week. You're getting an upgrade this week, maybe next week. But like, if we just said like week 12, I'm not looking at the schedule. I don't know who's playing who, but like, is Stevenson that much better than Gibbs by week 12?
I don't think
I
so.
don't really think so.
Yeah.
And then look, when you look at sort of Wilson Park's situation, I mean, 0-4, obviously not really competing this year. Doesn't have a lot of doesn't have like a foundational keeper
Mm-hmm.
to build the strategy around. And like, I feel like Gibbs kind of is your
Right.
foundational keeper
Right.
to build the strategy around. Like, that's the obviously he's a little expensive the way the rookie system works. It's tough with those early picks, but even at, I mean, what's his price, is like 18 or
Yeah.
something now. So even 18, it's like, if he looks good toward the end of the year, you could do a 2 or a 3 year deal,
Yeah.
and if he's a top 5 running back, you're getting a discount.
Further
Every year.
color as a Lions fan, you know, fans and beat writers have speculated that Gibbs is gonna be a slow breakout because he had to learn basically running back schemes, and then they taught him like a bunch of slot schemes. So for the same reason that tight ends are slow to break out, because they have to kind of learn like all the blocking schemes and like polish that up while also polishing up their receiving skills. People did speculate that it might take a while for Gibbs to kind of absorb all that knowledge and like be able
Mhm.
to like play without thinking, and like with his athletic ability, I think that's quite significant. So I do think he is going to be kind of a later breakout, and once once he feels comfortable with what the plays are and like his role and like how he wants to execute them, I do think this is definitely a trade that might look you know, quite regretful for Williston Park on that side. I will say maybe like, David Montgomery having such a pronounced week 4 role, right? Might have,
Mhm.
I know it soured a lot of Gibbs owners, like, oh, like we drafted this guy so hard, but all they do is like give it to David Montgomery like
Yeah, right.
40 times a game. It's more frustrating than I guess somebody that doesn't have Gibbs can say. Like, it's easy for us to be like, oh yeah, you should wait for Gibbs, like he's gonna be good. But like, when you're losing a week because you started Gibbs and he gets like
Mhm.
8 touches while the guy coming off of a a thigh injury is getting like 40 carries or whatever, you're like, there's definitely a tilt factor here. But I think
Mhm.
this is
Mm.
very opportunistic by Mars, and for this trade to look, I guess, fair or good for Wilson Park. Uh, Rashi Rice is gonna have to be better than oh, like let's take a flyer, like he better have some conviction on like, oh, Rice is, you know, a guy at least, and he could be kind of, the guy eventually. Like
That's
that.
what I feel like. If you were, yeah, if you wanted to trade Gibbs for like, the kind of return I think probably was out there, if you
Mm-hmm.
were maybe a little more patient
Yep.
here,
Yep.
like, it was a running back in the same I think you could have got a running back in the same category as Stevenson, who's like nice, a good
Mm-hmm.
top 20 whatever kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
um, and like a really a sure thing, like, this player is getting kept next year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is like a guy
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
who's part of my,
Right.
really part of my
Yeah, more of
plan.
a sure thing than what Rice seems like right now. I will say like
Yeah.
the downside of Wilson Park being such a busy guy is he doesn't have the tendency to shop trade. So if
Hmm.
somebody comes to him and presents something that is good enough for him, even if he could have gotten more for Gibbs, or like if he made it known to everyone that like that he could be had, uh he just won't do that often.
It's
So
exhausting. Yeah, I mean, it is
yeah,
exhausting.
yeah, that is true. Yeah, so it is definitely frustrating. For other prospective trade people like to see stuff like that sometimes, but I mean that's the benefit of being proactive like Mars or
Hmm.
Virginia. Like, you have to hunt down ideas yourself instead of just letting them trickle in. Like, even if it seems far fetched that Gibbs would be gettable, or even JSN. I think not everybody knew he was gettable. Like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
being the first to, like, present an idea, often you'll be able to get there. So really, I think we saw a lot of good stuff from Mars this week. Looks like prime John Lim stuff.
Hmm.
It's in the, clicking on all cylinders and stuff. So yeah, I think we all probably like this trade for Mars, but Rice will be probably
Yeah,
the
the thing I find really interesting about it, just from Mars's perspective, is like obviously I mean, the value is incredible. Now
yeah,
he's
yeah.
got like he's sort of trying to do he's sort of on the two timeline thing,
Yeah, yeah,
where this
he's
seems like,
got the
well,
Joe Lacob
it's
thing
maybe
going.
he's sort of winning this year, but maybe he's right to not be
Mm-hmm.
doubling down on this
All
year,
right.
like maybe that's actually pretty good
All
foresight to
right.
say, like, I don't quite have it this year. Like, I don't quite
Mm-hmm.
have the
I will say
but if he keeps getting lucky, he could maybe ship these guys off
right,
and
right. Yeah.
like
I will say
what Gibbs getting you at the deadline,
yeah, I will say even beyond the trades that we've discussed right now, he spent his first round pick on Anthony Richardson, who's looked, really good,
Hmm.
when he already had Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields as his only two keepers. So that kind of QB investment, you can only start, two, and we see the downside of that this week and last week, where he benched Fields, 5-year keeper, not on a bye, not hurt, and just completely benched. And
Hmm.
I mean, to his credit, Anthony Richardson is doing well, but like his assets are kind of all over the place. Where he is 3-1. Started off really well this week. Has three quarterbacks that are probably really really startable, and then a bunch of like kind of hold assets. Like hold JSN until he breaks out. Hold Gibbs until he breaks out, and he's held Jonathan Taylor, and he's on the verge of coming back. Like, this is a very interesting trade, and he's Brees Hall also probably fits into that, and he's probably a little bit fortunate to be 3-1 by points scored, but that like getting lucky through or whatever, like through the first 4 weeks, it might put him in an incredible position with the amount of possible trade
Hmm.
assets he has to work with near the deadline, because like I think most people agree that this roster as currently constructed isn't one of the top one or top two rosters on paper, but in terms of all the assets he's amassed, and he's 3-1 and still surviving, like he could definitely get his team to that point now. And I guess it's a high risk strategy where it could have completely flopped, where you're spending three huge like assets on QBs, and if he's like 1-3, like it's gonna look a lot dumber. But he is 3-1, and everything's coming up John right now. So I this is definitely a fascinating story. I think these two trades this week are, yeah, definitely a two timeline thing, or maybe he's just loading up assets, because he's 3-1. Like he has that kind of a cushion to play with, and Jonathan Taylor's coming back. Brees Hall snap count is
Yeah.
pitch count is gone apparently.
DJ Moore is alive again.
Yeah, yeah. We might have to respect this team. I
Mhm.
do think we kind of wrote them off a little bit in the first few weeks as right outside the true contender group, but uh, their early season start and these trades, I think, should have your attention. Should have everyone's attention now.
And there's never a dull moment on Mars for
Yeah,
sure. They
yeah.
always have our attention. All right, we've got 5 more minutes here.
Mhm.
So let's get off on this last one here.
Yeah.
Virginia receives Jimmy Garoppolo and two fab, and they trade away Desmond Ritter to Williston Park, who got a little active.
Mm.
Um, does anyone think Desmond Ritter is anything more than trash?
The bar sets so anything more
Yeah.
than trash.
Yeah.
No.
No, I don't
No.
think so. He doesn't pass the eye test, and that offense is brutal for, I think,
He
squeezing
just
out.
needed. I think that was before waivers cleared, so he just needed like security. He wanted
Yeah, at the
security, and
time, Jimmy G was, I guess, questionable with
still in
concussion.
concussion protocol, I
Yeah,
think.
and
Yeah.
he has Baker Mayfield on bye, and he didn't have Zach Wilson up to this point. So,
Hmm.
I guess and Pickett is hurt too. So I guess he was afraid of
Yeah.
not having a healthy quarterback at
Well,
all.
this is what happened to me last year, and I got super panicky. So I do this is how it feels when your quarterbacks are injured and on bye,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
just
yeah.
start
Quarterbacks are,
you don't want to wait for waivers to clear. You don't know who you're
yeah.
gonna get.
That's why, yeah. I mean, that's why we traded 3 fab for Mac Jones. It's not that we think Mac
Hmm.
Jones is worth 3 fab. It's just in the off case that we get shut out for everything, it's better to have a quarterback than nothing, right? So,
Right.
um,
Still,
Yeah, that we
the
so
worst quarterbacks are still gonna get 16, usually 15, 16.
Mac Jones got like four points last week, so I questioned that that theorem, but yeah, I mean this trade is
not much more to
not
say
much more
here.
to say. I mean,
Mhm.
Hua just, I guess,
Um,
kind of upgrading in his QB4 now, but I do think he probably has plans to trade one of Love, Herbert, and Burrow once other teams start hitting their buys and like they want a little bit more of an exciting
Yeah,
QB.
it
So
would be shocking if neither of these guys end up actually starting for either of these teams.
yeah, yeah, I actually don't think either will, judging by who they have and who they got. But it's a trade that makes sense for Wilson Park because of their injury issues, and Hua just upgrades slightly at QB4 probably, right? So
Hmm.
it's pretty
yeah,
self-explanatory. I don't think we'll
yeah,
be thinking about it any past today probably.
yeah. Wilson Park will instead get to root for the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wish them all the best and Zach
Mm-hmm.
Wilson and his continued success.
Hmm.
Uh, Another great show, you guys. I think we made it.
We did.
Yeah.
Really kind of got saved by this week having some really interesting trades
Uh-huh.
because looking back on it, I remember after last show I was like, okay, so next time we'll just do the in-season trades, and I was looking at the in-season trades up to that point, and they were so uninteresting. I was like, are we really gonna like queue up
Yes.
a
30 minutes on Kyler
yeah,
for
yeah, a
rookies
show
for
a show based on like these trades is gonna be rough, but luckily Mars came through with some
you love to see
material.
it.
Yeah, you love to see it. I think rookies being tradable like definitely opens the floodgates, and I think teams were a little tentative to trade the first few weeks just because it was a murky first few weeks. I think a lot of like some teams started really slow, and like a lot of guys that were hurt that are starting to get activated off IR and pup. Jonathan Taylor,
Mhm.
Cup. I think
Yeah.
Barkley's going to come back soon. So I think a lot of teams are going to start, exploring what they're doing with a lot of those guys, and we'll see a little bit more activity going forward.
Mhm.
And maybe we can revisit it in 3 or 4 weeks
Yeah, and I
with.
think we'll start to really cement who's contending and who's
Right, yeah,
um
that'll also change things
vice
for sure.
versa.
So
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, good show,
All right.
and I hope to
Awesome
talk
show.
to you guys
Yeah.
again soon.
yeah, tight
Absolutely.
1 hour segment. Thank you guys.
Very nice. All right.